Hello, Dr. Joe here of the drjoe.com and the 2020from.com. One of you folks watched one of my videos where I talked about fruits that are suitable for diabetics and pre-diabetics. And she left a comment suggesting that I look at the other end of the spectrum and talk about fruits that may not be suitable for diabetics and pre-diabetics. Hence this video, because I thought it was a nice idea. So in this video, I'm going to give you 11 fruits that diabetics and pre-diabetics may consider unsuitable for their blood sugar control. Now, the criterion that I've used in this video is glycemic index. For those of you who may not be familiar with what glycemic index is, it's a measure of how quickly a food will raise your blood sugar level when you consume it. And it runs on a scale of between 1 to 100. Foods that have glycemic index of 55 and below are considered low glycemic index. Between 56 and 69 are considered medium glycemic index foods. And foods that have glycemic index of 70 and above are considered high glycemic index. All the foods you're going to see on this list have a glycemic index of 56 and above. Now, diabetics and pre-diabetics need to consume fruits just like the rest of us. It's just that they need to tread a lot more carefully because fruits have natural sugars that have the potential to spike our blood sugar levels. But there are ways around it, and I'm going to do a separate video where I'm going to show you some tips and tricks that you can employ as a diabetic or pre-diabetic and actually eat any fruit you like, really. But that's a subject for another video altogether. Until then, let's get on with this list of fruits that have the potential to raise our blood sugar levels to undesirable levels. If you like. Now, the first food that diabetics may consider unsuitable for themselves is grapes. And grapes have a glycemic index of 59, okay, 59. Now, I've got some grapes here. These are red grapes. They actually have medium glycemic load. A cup of these red grapes has about 24 to 25 grams of carbohydrates in it, which is not excessively high, but as a diabetic, you want to be very careful consuming grapes. But like I said, I'm going to do a separate video on how you can actually eat all the grapes you want. So that's food number one. Let's move on to fruit number two. Fruit number two is pineapple with a glycemic index of 60. Okay, now pineapples, as you know, they're very sweet. They got that glycemic index of 60, which is still medium glycemic index. And even though they are quite nourishing, in particular, they have this phytonutrient called bromelain, which has potent anti-inflammatory properties. You still want to be careful consuming a pineapple if you are a diabetic or pre-diabetic, okay? So that's fruit number two. Let's move on to fruit number three. Fruit number three is papaya with a glycemic index of 60. Glycemic index similar to that of pineapple. This is a tropical fruit. Growing up in the tropics, I used to love papaya. I used to eat it a lot. But as a diabetic, you want to be careful with it. It's got lots of vitamin C, and it's also got high water content as well. But as a diabetic, you want to be careful eating papayas, okay? Let's move on to the next food, which is really ripe bananas, as I put here. The really ripe bananas have a glycemic index of 62, okay? Which is still in the medium category. Now, the thing about bananas is, I got some here. They've got a ripening scale. Diabetics can eat green bananas, it's not a problem. But as a diabetic, you want to eat the bananas at the stage where they're beginning to ripen. Now, I bought this yesterday. They had the right shade, but 24 hours later, as I'm shooting this video now, they've gone a shade lighter than I would have loved to present to you. But as a diabetic, you can still eat bananas. You just want to eat them at the stage where they're beginning to ripen, okay? So bananas for you there. So let's move on. The next food that diabetics may consider unsuitable for them are dry dates with a glycemic index of 62, okay? Dry dates. You want to be careful with dates. As you know, dates are really sweet. I got some here. These are dates that they tell me they got natural toffee taste. But when we look at the nutritional information, 100 grams of these dates here have got 68 grams of carbohydrates, of which the sugars are 68 grams. So as you can tell, dates have a nice, glycemic load and also a medium category glycemic index. So you want to be careful with dates if you're diabetic or pre-diabetic. There are ways around it, but I'll tell you that in another video. Next, fruits you want to be careful about as a diabetic or pre-diabetic are dried cranberries with a glycemic index of 64. Okay, 64. Now I've got some here. These are dried cranberries. They are also called raisins. Okay, raisins. And this pack tells me they're suitable for snacking, suitable for salads, suitable for baking, and suitable for cereal. Those are my two favorite uses. I use them for baking, and I also use them in my cereal as well. I'm going to do a separate video on my baked oatmeal, another video on that, and I'm going to be using the dried cranberries in that video. So yeah, you want to be careful as a diabetic having dried cranberries, also referred to as raisins. Okay, so that's another one you want to watch, even though they are very nourishing. Now let's move on. The next fruit you want to be careful about are raisins with a glycemic index of 64, similar to the dried cranberries. I got some raisins here. Okay, these are some nice raisins here, and when I look at the nutritional info here, it tells me that 100 grams of these raisins have got 69.3 grams of carbohydrates, of which the sugars are 69.3 grams. That's fairly high. So as a diabetic or pre-diabetic, you really want to be careful eating raisins. But I'm also going to give you tips on how to consume your raisins. Okay, so that's that. Let's move on to the next fruit, which will be cantaloupe with a glycemic index of 65. Now, still medium glycemic index for the cantaloupes. They're quite nourishing. They got potassium, and they've also got plenty of vitamin C. Now, cantaloupes have high water content. You can eat them as a diabetic, but you want to be careful on the amount that you consume, because with that glycemic index of 65, they have the potential to spike you if you've got diabetes or pre-diabetes. Okay, so that's cantaloupe there. Let's move on to the next fruit that has the potential to spike you, and it is watermelon with a glycemic index of 72. Okay, now that's high glycemic index. Now you really want to be careful eating watermelons. I've got one here. If you haven't got any weights at home, you can use watermelon for your workouts. They're quite heavy. So but here's the thing about watermelons. They are mainly made up of water. Okay, they are 92% water, and they've got a low glycemic load. Okay, 100 grams of watermelon only has 7.5 grams of carbohydrates in it. That's really low. Okay, but having said that, the glycemic index is 72, which is high. So you want to be careful as a diabetic or pre-diabetic consuming watermelon. They're kind of similar to cantaloupe, really. Okay, so that's watermelon there for you. Let's move on. The next fruits you want to be careful about are canned fruits. Okay, so I got a can of peaches here in light syrup. The problem with canned fruits is that they are usually immersed in syrup or juice, and that means the sugar content is really going to be high. So ordinarily as a diabetic you can have peaches, but the fact that they got them here submerged in light syrup, the sugar content just skyrockets, which means the glycemic index is really, really high. You want to be careful consuming these peaches, or rather, fruits that are canned. If they are in water, okay, that's fine. But if they are in juice or in syrup, you want to avoid them as a diabetic or pre-diabetic. Now let's move on. The next fruit you want to consider avoiding as a diabetic or pre-diabetic are candied fruits. Okay, candied fruits. Essentially, candied fruits are fruits that have been processed, and in that process of processing them, the manufacturers have added sugar on top of the fruits, and that for me is actually not a good idea. So that alters the glycemic index of that fruit. The fact that more sugar has been added onto the raw fruit, it just makes it unsuitable for consumption for a diabetic or pre-diabetic, because guaranteed that fruit, that candied fruit, will spike your blood sugar levels. There's no doubt about that. So those are your 11 fruits that you may want to consider avoiding as a diabetic or pre-diabetic. So like I mentioned earlier on, I'm going to do a separate video where I'm going to give you tips and tricks that you can employ as a diabetic and eat any fruit you like, to be honest. So be on the lookout for that. Now, hopefully you got some value from this video. If you did, please give the video a thumbs up. Please like the video. Please share this video with your friends, family, and colleagues. Now, if you got any questions regarding this video, all the fruits that I've mentioned in this video, go ahead, leave your comments down below. Let me know what your favorite fruit is as a diabetic or pre-diabetic. Leave your comments down below as well. I think that's about it. Until next time, well, this is Dr. Joe signing out.